Happy Devils Wednesday. We're back. State of the Fan Address, episode 227. Oh, yeah. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with pucksandpitchforks.com editor-in-chief, Nick Villano. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, or X Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. We've got a great podcast for you, talking about the 50 greatest New Jersey Devils players of all time. Plus, we got two special guests coming into the Andy Green room very soon. His name is Chico Resch, Devils Hockey Network, and Mr. Devil himself from MSG Networks, Ken Daneyko, will be on for a very, very powerful, could go into overtime podcast. Nick, I'm back from vacation. I am well rested. I do not feel the jet lag because the adrenaline is in, because we've got an amazing podcast tonight.
I'm excited. Everybody's going to yell at me, and it's going to be fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's why I'm excited, because I get to yell at you about your wonderful article written. I mean, you spent a lot of time on it. There was a lot of thought into it, knowing that you're going to get crushed by three of us, myself, Chico, possibly Ken Daneyko.
We don't know how Ken feels. We know Chico's got some issues. You told me Chico was letting you know that he's got issues, and I kind of knew that when I was like, you know what, Sam, get Chico. Let's just have him. If I'm gonna get eviscerated, I might as well get it from Chico, because even like he'll probably send me an ice cream sundae afterwards, just to make up for it. But you go first. You got time.
Well, you know what? I think Chico, putting him at number 46 could have been insulting. See, it's one of these unique situations where two of our guests are actually on the top 50 that we're asking. It's like we're not debating this, you and I, at a bar. No, we have two out of the 50 on this program. Mm-hmm. Which makes it very unique. It's like and plus on top of everything else, we've got our online folks on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, X Live, Twitch, that could be chiming in. We want your questions and comments as well for Chico and Ken. And this is going to be a fun conversation. It's live.
It's no holds barred. It is what it is. But I think we're gonna have some time in between our two guests for you to give us your thoughts. But before we kind of jump into it, I kind of want to give the context of it all. So I started this last year, and people know how much I write. I write probably like around 25 to 30 articles a month. So when you
and Nick is disconnected again. Oh my goodness. How embarrassing. It's the internet. It happens, folks. I don't know what Nick was trying to say, but if you go to pucksandpitchforks.com. Now, I'm not saying to change the channel, what you're doing. Get another device. Follow along. You got to go on pucksandpitchforks.com and follow along on this top 50 list. That's very controversial. Nick, we got you back.
Yeah. We had to get the kinks out in the beginning before we get the guests on. That's all that is.
Yeah.
I'll blame a certain peacock over in Philadelphia for all this, but that's okay.
Well, Comcast? I'll just say it out loud. I mean, the debate is on social media right now, because I think Beer Baron, when the new schedule came out, the change of times, he started going off about, well, my cable company doesn't even show the Devils. So I guess we can call out Comcast like how we do James Dolan.
How
Internet.
are they surviving not showing the Devils, the Knicks, the Rangers, the Islanders? Like, how are you just... I mean, who owns TV anymore for anything besides sports?
You know what? I don't know. I don't understand the strategy behind both sides. I think you've got to come to an agreement, and there are probably other non-traditional revenue models that you can do to make money, which is the goal here. But let's not talk about the Peacock network. Let's not talk about and besides,
but let me go through this quick. Just because. So I started this last year. Just so everybody knows, last year Jack Hughes was number 48 on the list. Obviously, he moved up precipitously after the year he had. Some people question some of my methods on how I did it. I will tell you, I prioritized season greatness over long-term above average. So, if a guy was a good penalty killer and a great third liner for a long time, and then you had a guy who had 95 points 2 years or whatever it is, I think that the 95-point guy is ranked ahead of the guy with a 15-year career of a penalty killer third liner. That's just how I went about the rankings. There's not a lot of guys in Devils history that had those spurts. 3 guys that come to mind: Taylor Hall, Alexander Mogilny, and Ilya Kovalchuk. Kovalchuk was hard because, Sam, when you look at the numbers, even as much as we dislike him now after what he did, retire in the middle of the offseason right before the season started and kind of put the Devils in a bad spot, we still kind of overrate how good he was here. He was great in that 2012 season and going to the Stanley Cup. He led all players in the playoffs in goals, had 8 goals. He had that back injury, was really carrying the Devils. But when you look at the whole scope of it, I had him ahead of guys of Sikora at first. These guys who have that, but also the longevity. So I moved after writing it. I moved Kovalchuk down. I had Mogilny stuck in that. I moved Kovalchuk down. I kind of wish I moved Mogilny now. I will say that's the one. I have 2 regrets, and one you said Chico's gonna yell at me for, so I won't bring that on. But I kind of wish I moved Mogilny down, just because when I look at the players he's ahead of, I kind of feel like I overrated him because of that one great season in 2001. Because he was all right 2000 when they traded for him, and then he was kind of bad. Not bad, but he was an average when they brought him back later in his career for that last season of his career. Oh, we all forget that they sent him down to the Albany River Rats as a cat move. There was it was just a weird season. So I kind of wish I moved him down. I think the legacy and the fact that we fight for him to be in the Hall of Fame every year kind of pushed me towards a higher ranking.
Okay. And I think Chico, in all fairness, he would want an explanation how you're ranking all that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Chico has his own opinions. Chico is very smart. He's, I would say, somewhat of an insider. He has access, all that, and he's been there from the beginning. He cracked the top 50. And what's the goal here, of this fine piece that you put on puckspitchforce.com is not really trolling. It's just it's just a different. Yeah, I mean, we don't troll here. We may have different opinions. Yeah. It may sound like, if you remember, last year at this time, that I'm trolling about Lindy Ruff, but there are reasons for it. And that's why we have discussion. It makes great hockey talk.
I will say, you got to say, I gave, if you read the article, I said Chico was on the Mount Rushmore of Devils importance with John McMillan, Scott Stevens, and Martin Brodeur. And I think because of him being the representative coming over.
John McMullen, right?
Yeah, what did I say?
McMillan. You were probably thinking Billy McMullen. Yeah.
Yeah. Just what he's been to this organization from day one to now, to have that longevity. There's a lot of, Daneyko is an argument for that now that he's the broadcaster, and that's kind of like where. But Chico was with. He's been with the greats. He was the TV guy. Now he's the radio guy, and he's seen everything for the season. He's been so important to this franchise. When you think about a guy who, in the grand scheme of things, Chico spent 3 years here. He was with Colorado before that, but I didn't count that. He only spent 3 years playing for the New Jersey Devils and left for the Flyers. And for him to come back and to be as important as he was for all those years, he's a Mount Rushmore guy. But when I look at just the on ice play, he only played for 3 years here. He had no defense in front of him. It really wasn't fair to him. It was the running gun 80s. It's hard to evaluate what it was like to be a goalie back then, right? The Hall of Famers have an under 900 save percentage from back then, and we can't deny their greatness. They're still some of the greatest of all time. What's Fuhrer? Fuhrer's is 902 or something, right? Fuhrer's isn't fantastic. He's a Hall of Famer, and he deserves it. Nobody's denying that he's not a Hall of Famer. It's just a different time period. So it was really hard to evaluate him. Say him against Sean Burke, because Sean Burke is a player that didn't make the list, and him and Chris Torreri, him and it's so weird now because we've had such a bad run of goalies. Him against Mackenzie Blackwood.
I gotta tell you, and that's where I'm gonna harp on you. I would rank Sean Burke ahead of Corey Schneider, and for that reason, because that was a major milestone in the franchise history of making it into the playoffs. He did it as a rookie, and he had a hot streak down the stretch, and it brought the franchise 3 steps forward, but of course they took 2 steps back the following year, but it was a giant leap forward. I mean, they were on the cusp of getting into the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, but I think the reason I maybe downplayed Burke is because Aaron Broughton had a career year that year. John McClain had a career year that year. They had a bunch of offensive players who put up stupid stats. And, it's the 80s, but the Devils weren't doing that up and down the lineup, right? There wasn't a bunch of 60-point guys. There was, maybe Shanahan would have a good season. Maybe Broughton would have a good season here and there. Maybe, McClain, he was more later. That's the 88 was when he started to really hit his stride. But there was always Peter Stastny might have a good season here or there. There's all this. Stastny was another one that was really hard to rank because he's a Hall of Famer. And he was really important to the Devils, right? Getting a guy of that stature onto that Devils team at that time was very important. Do I consider that in my rankings? Or do I just look at what they did on the ice? It was the 80s was the hardest part to evaluate because there was a lot of players who were essential. Shanahan was another one. How do I rank Shanahan? He was the first guy to leave a line of fire out the door when he left. Obviously, we don't mind it now because we got Scott Stevens, but that he could have been public enemy number 1. So, I that's the situation that we're looking at right now is that when you're trying to rank 40 years of Devils hockey, it's, and again, I'm not asking for sympathy. I put my feet to the fire. There are some players that I legitimately left off, and I have my reasons for it. The one that you brought up, and it's been brought up a couple times to me, Dainis Zubris. And, we can get into the discussion now or after Chico in between the two guests, but, I had him on the original list. I took him off for Jesper Bratt. When Bratt put up the 73 points again, I said I got to put Bratt over Zubris because, I'm looking for these players that excelled. And Zubris was great at what he did. But what he did was so... The Devils have had so many players do that for so long. Just kind of come in, follow the system, do the right thing, and I have to ask, is Zubris a product of the Lou Lamoriello system, or is Zubris did Zubris fit in well? Like, was it Zubris who is the reason why Zubris did what Zubris did? So it's, I kind of, like I said, he was a last-minute subtraction from the list. I'm going to write a list, actually, that talks about the players that didn't make it, like the 5 that didn't make it. So that's going to be an article that's coming out next week. Just kind of like evaluate myself. Be like, why didn't you put these players on the list? And, go from there.
Yeah, and speaking of Zubris, I alluded to Pavel Zacha, that if Pavel Zacha could be like Zubris and consistently win those battles in the corners, I think Zacha could be still, with the Devils, but that's besides the point. Our next guest, good friend of the podcast, he is in the Andy Green room right now. His name is Chico Resch. You know him as the color guy on the radio and online on SiriusXM and all these other places. When you're listening to the Devils game, you can find him on Twitter or X at Chico Resch NJD. Chico, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
Good to see you guys. I'm excited to be here. Hockey season's still a ways away, right, Nick? But Nick's writing some pretty interesting articles trying to get the fans all juiced up for the season, and we'll have a good one tonight. But we could talk about a lot of things because I got a lot on my mind, and I'm curious what you guys are thinking. So good to see you back off vacation, Sam, and good to see you, Nick.
Yeah. It's so great to have you back on, Chico. We obviously have you on for a reason. Top 50 players of all time. I said to Sam, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put my feet to the fire. Why not? Let's have somebody who's the most knowledgeable guy, the guy who's been around the Devils from day one. You've played with some of these players. You've been in the locker room with just about every single person on this list. So Sam says you have some gripes. So I kind of want to give you a chance to, if you're going to yell at me, just get it over with, Chico. I'm ready for it.
I'll let you two, duke it out.
Well, thanks, Sam. No, Nick, that's what it's about. You're writing things that's bringing passion to fans. Mm-hmm. And, I'll say the top 20, no complaints. Top 10, bang on. I was talking to Dave Poulin last weekend in a flyer event we had. And it was Mark Howe. Mark Howe, even better, market defenseman. He raved about Brian Rafalski. And Brian was really good, and you had him fine. The only thing for me, Nick, I wouldn't put a current player on the top list because I don't think they've earned it yet, and we don't know where they're going to land. But that's fine. I get you did that. Really, there was 3 areas that I'd like to ask you about. One was Corey Schneider made the list, and I'm just curious as a Devil. Now, see, why don't you do this, Nick? Tell us what your criteria was for getting on that list. Let's start there.
So obviously there's a lot to decipher. Just for ease of this, I cut out the Rockies years and the Scouts years. So those weren't associated into the rankings. For current players, it is as if they retired today. Like their career is done. Would their ranking be? So Hughes was a hard one because he's got the most points ever in Devils history, but he's only been around for 4 years. Daneyko and Bratt the same. It was kind of like that's why you didn't see a lot of other players like that on there, like some of the like Hamilton and stuff like that. And then for what I was telling Sam earlier is that the way I look at my rankings is I would rather have a guy who had 2 to 3 years of fantastic play, and instead of like 10 to 15 years of average play. Like that's how my rankings in my head went. Like if you were a superstar for 2 to 3 years, I am ranking you higher than a guy who was consistent. And I'm not talking like John Madden was a guy who he wasn't just consistent. He was fantastic for 10 years. So that's a guy who got ranked higher, even though he's a third or fourth liner. Like, we know that the value of that was a little bit higher. But when it came to the guys like, I don't want to disparage anybody, but like the guys who were there, the guys there for 10 years, they were there. They were consistent. You knew what they were going to bring. But then you had a guy like, let's say Schneider. Schneider is the one that I'm kind of regretting where I put him, because I took so much into account those 2 years where he was Vezina level, replacing Martin Brodeur, the legend. But I don't think I took enough into account the 2 years that he kind of tanked their season. Like, and it wasn't his fault. He was injured, but I don't think I took that enough into account. So I think that I would move him down pretty precipitously, probably like 35, 40, if I could redo it again. But again, you kind of publish these things, Chico, and you're just like, all right, well, now here comes everything else. Let's see what everybody's going to say, and everybody's going to kind of have their opinion. And but yeah, that was my Schneider tick. My Schneider tick was those 2 years he was Vezina level. Like, if he was on any other team, he might have 2 trophies in his closet right now. But the hip injuries existed, and he was there for, I think, 3 or 4 more years. And he was great for 2. He was above average for 2, and he was pretty unplayable for 2. And again, not his fault. Hip injuries just are impossible, especially in today's game. But I think you're right. I don't think I took that as far into account as I should have.
Well, Nick, no, I can see it. But when I think of the Devils' top 50, here's what I think of. I think of they had a positive impact. They had a big impact on the New Jersey franchise, a season. Like, you had Taylor Hall. No one. I don't care. No one's had a season like Taylor Hall. Okay? Corey Schneider should never have been a Devil. At that time, Bo Horvath was available. Our team was going down. And I agree. What Corey did was he made us a little bit higher, so we had worse picks. But it wasn't his fault. And then Marty Brodeur's career's coming to an end. And we know, Nick, that played into kind of an ugly ending for Marty. I guess for me, and I only say that, Corey did all he could. Great guy. I just wish he would have never been a Devil, to be honest with you. That's my opinion. But okay, I get where you're going if you're just going with performance. The current players, I just don't think current players should be on. I mean, if Jack tanks next year, which he won't, but just say he did, Jesper Bratt, where do you put him if he, like at least 10 years with the team? So just a couple others. Jaromir Jagr was 50. And I know the reason I didn't like Jaromir Jagr as a Devil, and he was fun to watch, he didn't really want to be a Devil. He just, there wasn't anything else available. Lou really schmoozed him. He came on board. Like, for me, he's a Penguin. He went to Washington. He didn't want to be in Washington. And that's the only thing. I mean, performance, but I'm always thinking, do you want to be a Devil? Did you make an impact with the Devils? But still, he is, as a player, yes. But the one I think, and you got to tell me, Nick, because Damon Severson. I loved Damon Severson when he came in. I thought, okay, this guy's 6'4", skates. He's got it all. But what was frustrating for me, and Damon Severson is a really nice guy. So we're not talking about like Corey Schneider, great guy off the ice. We're not talking that. But Damon Severson never progressed, and then he never made an impact. And I like Damon, but Poulin and David Poulin, we were just talking about players, and he played for the Flyers, and he's with TSN up in Canada now. And 2 criteria: if a player didn't make you afraid to play against them, like if you weren't worried, oh geez, I got to play him tonight, that eliminated a lot of that player's worth. And if he didn't make an impact at some point in a big game, a big series, a big year, then I also eliminate that. Only because, Nick, we've been good and bad. You've seen it. I don't want to just be, it's okay, it's entertaining. But as an ex-player, are you making an impact for this team? And if you're not, then I don't consider you a top 50 Devil. But but I mean, most of what you did was great, and the ones we're talking about, no, they were, Nick, and the ones we're talking about are just that you wrote something that people could talk about, and that's what you wanted. So, but just tell me, did you really like Damon Severson? I was shocked that he was on the list. Potentially, yes, but in the fact of what he accomplished, I felt very bad for Damon, for the fans, because he just didn't blossom like I had hoped.
So the case for Damon, and even for the entire time he's been with the Devils, the case for Damon is that his numbers look better than they are. And he's making an impact here, and he's being put in a position to, I don't want to say being put in a position to fail, because every hockey player should be able to kind of fit into where they're supposed to be. But, you're putting a second line guy in the first line every year. And this is the same argument I had for Andy Green. Andy Green got a bad rap towards the end of his career because he was being put on the first line at 36, 37 years old, playing 22 minutes. And that's just not what he was. And I don't think that's ever what Severson was. So to your point, that's a good point. That, is Severson, if Severson was never a first liner, should he be on a greatest list of any kind? And I hear you, because I don't think that anybody was coming into the Prudential Center with Damon Severson circled on their board. But he did have some longevity. I believe, what was it, 8 years, I believe he played, or 7 years he played with the Devils. He has, and it was kind of interesting because, when you're writing this, it's now finite, right? He's gone. He's not going to come back next year. I don't foresee him, he signed an 8-year deal. So this is probably where he's going to end up. If he does come back, it would be at the end of his career. And, it will be, Lou Lamoriello's not here anymore to sign the guys who used to be here.
Yeah, so, right. He might go to the island though.
Yeah. He'll probably go to New York. But that was Severson's. It was looking back at the numbers, and I feel like, I feel like I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm talking to Devils fans every single day, and I'm getting opinions thrown at me a lot. And I feel like sometimes you almost go against the grain. Be like, everybody feels this certain way about Severson. I need to figure out why the numbers say something different, and you kind of dig into the numbers. And I'm somebody who tries to watch as much tape as numbers I read to try to see why the numbers say what they say, instead of just blindly believing the numbers. I try to be like, well, what do I see in the ice? And obviously Severson, there were some issues when you looked at the on ice play. The mistakes were large, so he'd have 8 great shifts and then make a terrible mistake and a goal will be scored against him. And then 8 more great shifts, and then that's the game. And it's like, all right, he had 16 great shifts, but the one bad shift he had, a goal was scored against him. And it was his fault, directly. Whether it went in off of him because he was in a bad position or he made a bad pass and got intercepted. So, I've always had trouble evaluating those players. What do I do with that player? The player that is good for 16 shifts and then atrocious for 1. Because hockey is a game where most of the scores are 3-2, right? 1 goal matters, so my thought process was that the larger of his game was good. And then how do I evaluate that he would just make the most, what are you doing play? So he was just really hard for me to kind of evaluate.
Well, the only thing I say again, Nick, is I like Damon as a player. You go in the locker room, you would like Damon. But we're talking, if hockey matters, the game's on the line, you got to initiate. You can't just wait to defend, retaliate. I want to see some initiation. I mean, let's be honest. We all like Dougie Hamilton's skill. He can dance and shoot. But what's happened, if you look at just Boston, Calgary, Carolina, now with the Devils, and he still may come, but Dougie, you got to want to be the difference in the game. You got to want to have that spotlight shining on you like Scott Stevens did. Scotty was so focused. And so that's all I'm saying. But personalities are personalities, and you can't make someone into something they're not. And what you were talking about with Damon was a pretty standard conversation in management. Loved some of the things he did, but why can't he take it to the next level? But anyway, let's wish him the best in Columbus. And, for what he did, he wasn't terrible here. But I was just thinking, I just wanted so much more out of Damon. And, he just couldn't deliver. So that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Sam, I think you have some comments, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of comments going on because, Chico, we are live. So people are chiming in. Dave Singer says that, Chico, you're a top 50 human. Very nice compliment there. Botchicaloop says, wow, with an exclamation points. 2 exclamation points. Chico's raw honesty is awesome. People are just loving it. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Like,
okay.
Yeah, awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and and then there's some thoughts, about Damon Severson, and also there is a question from Dave Singer. Just getting off topic here, your thoughts on Luke Hughes?
Well, I'm talking to the Flyer people, right? Mm-hmm. And the scouts. They got Daniel Briere as the GM, right? Mm-hmm. They put a lot of people in place, but Mark Howe and I were talking, and if you look at the Stanley Cup winners, even with Tampa 2 in a row, Hedman was a stud, and then he was surrounded with they had other good players too. It wasn't just all him. Last year, people say, well, Vegas, I mean, they're using a backup goalie or whatever, and they're winning the Stanley Cup. But if you break down their top 4 defense, and I know Petrangelo's older, but that was a good defense. So, everybody is trying. I mean, on the inside, everybody knows if you got like 4 pretty darn good defense, you're on the right track. Jonesy, who's the president now of the Flyers, and was an analyst, he was saying the same thing. The Flyers have some nice pieces, but their defense has been decimated. So it's going to be tough. And when you talk about Luke Hughes, here is my question. Luke Hughes, we didn't get enough to see if he's ready to play. I mean, I hope he is. But I honestly don't know. I know Nemec, we talked about Nemec, and he had the whole year, as you guys know, up in the minors, and he learned his trade. He's still, from what Craig Ramsey was his coach, used to play in the NHL and coached the Slovakian team, and said, he's still got to learn, to pick his spots, not to get caught as much, all those things that we're all familiar with. I would think that's going to be a good battle, but I would think Luke Hughes is going to get a good look, right, next year. How he does, honestly, you guys, Luke's one of the nicest kids you're going to meet. So again, we're talking nuts and bolts. People paying a lot of money for parking, for tickets. They're diehard. I like guys, but you know what? I like guys when they win the Stanley Cup even more, just because they've gone for it and they've achieved it.
Yeah.
So I like Luke. I don't know where he'll play. You'd think our power play. I saw Mark Recchi in Philly last weekend. Mark was with us, and it was interesting, Nick and Sam. I said, Mark, it wasn't really your fault. He said, well, the biggest thing when I was there running the power play, as compared to this year, you had more options this year. You had a little more depth. And I didn't break it all down to see, but Mark knows the power play, and so and so did Brunette. I mean, they're both great power play guys. So I don't think it was the coaching, but when you get the talent, so where will you guys tell me where does Luke Hughes fit? He's got to be offense, right? He has to bring offense, or he's not going to be a shutdown D.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Is he ready?
I mean, here's my thoughts: is that you didn't see Luke Hughes at development camp, so that tells me he's not a development player anymore. I think the Devils look at him as an NHL player. I think the fact that they didn't add on the left side, so if you don't play, like say you send Luke Hughes to the minors this year, you have Kevin Ball and Brendan Smith as your left side defense. And then so that's kind of a little bit of a weakness if Luke Hughes isn't ready. But I think the way that the Devils defense is built, right? You're not going to pair Luke Hughes with Dougie Hamilton. That's just asking for chaos. So you pair Luke Hughes with somebody like John Marino, who is a defensive defenseman. He has the mindset that he's going to take a step back and always be prepared for that 2-on-1 and whatever the case may be. And Marino is so good that I think that's going to, like, he has the speed to cover. He makes really good decisions on the 2-on-1 because the Devils faced a lot of 2-on-1s last year too. So
yeah,
I think my bold prediction for Luke Hughes is that he's going to be on power play 1. I think they're going to put Hamilton on power play 2. And I know a lot of people think that's insane, but you have, and again, it has to come with like that instant connection that he's going to have with Jack Hughes. If those two, I think you want to get them together as much as possible. And if you can dictate that by putting Luke and Jack on the power play together, and that's where Luke already excels is with the man advantage. He was so good at that in Michigan. He with the U.S. National Development Team, he knows how to play that already. He made some mistakes with it in the playoffs last year. I think he made one horrendous pass, but that's why you have this offseason. That's why you go over tape and you go over, those how that's going to work. You go through training camp, you go through the preseason. But that's on today, August 30th, 2023. I think Luke Hughes is going to be your power play defenseman, and I think it's going to go very well.
Well, let me say this. I got to tell my wife, Diane. No, I don't have any lights on. I'm dim enough in the head, but now I'm getting, Diane, can you turn on the lights, please? Thank you, honey. Well, see,
Thanks,
Nick,
Diane.
this is what I'm saying. Thank you. You're projecting. And we can all do that. But remember, Michigan, World Juniors, not the night after night in the NHL. But I agree with you that Luke Hughes will get every chance. And I hope he is dynamite. And I love him with John Marino. Ronnie Hextall was one of my best friends, but him trading Johnny Marino for Ty Smith, I was just shocked. And I thought we were friends, but I thought, Ronnie, if you had called me, I would have told you, I like Ty Smith, but you got to be able to skate in the National Hockey League now. But anyway, so I think you're right, but do not underestimate Kevin Ball, guys. I know he's been a slow mature. I said to Kevin at the end of last year, I'll just tell you a couple things I said to some of the players. So I said, Kevin, you made some nice jumps this year. He says, yeah, no, I got a ways to go. And I said, well, what's your plans for the summer? And this is what I like, Nick and Sam. Don't get me wrong. Those guys look at so many stinking tapes and this and that. You got to do this. But you know what? You got to do it when you're on the ice under pressure. So he said, I still go to the gym. I got to maintain my conditioning. But he said, I'm spending a lot more time on the ice surface, like trying to read the play, saying, okay, the puck's in the corner. What am I going to do? He said, it's what you're doing on the ice. And I said, you know what? I can see it. He's very conscientious. That guy has drive and he wants to get better. And I always say that it's not about working hard. It's about working hard smart. I've seen guys come and go. The Devils, even guys I played with. Yeah, you're working hard, but I got to tell you, you're not working that smart. I don't tell them that because my wife always said, keep your mouth zipped a little more, be a little more diplomatic. But really, Nick and Sam, it's not about working hard. It is, but it's working hard smart. And Kevin does that. So then here's the one thing. Just I'll give you guys an insight. So there's about a week left or so, and I went and I like Mikey McLeod, another salt of the earth guy, great guy, right? He scored 4 goals last year, right? Now he killed penalties and stuff. I said, Mike, I mean, you had a good year and you're fast. You're maybe the fastest guy on the team. I said, but Mikey, are you just a 4-goal scorer? Is that who you are? Well, he kind of jumped back and said, well, no. I said, well, how are you going to get to the next level? I said, Mike, this summer, you're never going to lose your speed. Forget about carrying pucks through the neutral zone and da-da-da-da-da. From the top of the circles down, Mikey McLeod learned to toe drag. And he agreed. I said, you learned to toe drag this year? Yeah. But I said, when you have to finish, you can't shoot it on the ice. You got to get it over the skates and the stick. And if you can, under the crossbar, or by the blocker, over the blocker. The selection and positioning of the shot is what will make you from a 4-goal scorer. If Mikey McLeod, think about it, guys. If Mikey McLeod got to 15 goals a year, he is a 15-year player. I am telling you. Because 15 goals for a guy doing all the other stuff he does would be phenomenal. So as we're discussing here, a lot of it's projection, but I like what you're saying. But here's what I got to ask both you guys. I'll shut up for a minute, Nick and Sam. You guys take this. The one thing that disappointed me a little bit at the end of the year, and I did my homework, Vitek Vanacek, he won 18 one-goal games, which, and you mentioned it, Nick, Devils still gave up a lot of 2-on-1s. It's not goaltending like it was when Marty was playing, where you read the play, okay, my defenseman's got that guy, I just got to worry about the puck. No, that guy's open. The top of the slot's open. The guy with the puck's got a partial breakaway. There's so many options for the goalies. So, but here's one thing I'll just say to you guys, and you tell me, what do these 4 goalies have in common from last year? Colin Hellenbuck, Shesterkin, Vasilevsky, and Ullmark, who won the Conn Smythe. What do those 4 goalies have in common from last year?
They were out in the first round.
Thank you, Nick. I'm just saying, as a fan, we got to get out of our heads that there's a goalie out there that's going to come in and be lights out, because those 4 teams were pretty good and they didn't go past the first round. And then we saw what Vegas did with, the guy was obviously better than people thought, but he wasn't a name. So do you guys, I just want them to help Vitek feel good about being a Devil. You can do it, Vitek, man. You can do it, Vitek. You could be a winner. Yeah, you got to change some things like everybody and be he gets down on himself too much. And I don't know exactly where that comes from. But anyway, I want to ask you guys how you feel, and be honest, and your listeners, how you feel the Devils are in between the pipes. Are they in good shape or not?
Sam, I'll let you go first. I see you jumped in.
Well, everything you said, Chico, I've been saying it throughout the off season that with the goaltending, I think Vitek, I think he's a good goaltender. I think him and Schmid could be a tandem. I didn't like what I was reading with some articles that I've read that the Schmid would spend all of next season in Utica. I thought Schmid played very well. I thought Vitek kind of fizzled out in the end there. I'm not quite sold on Vitek being an absolute number 1, but with the rumors about Hellebuck, which would just wreck the salary cap structure of the team itself if he were to sign long term, plus his age. Then there were rumors about Gibson out in Anaheim coming. I think what the Devils have right now is they have a budding star in Schmid. What's his upside? No one knows yet, but his poise has me intrigued. Vitek, if his endurance can get a little bit better throughout the season and play as many games as he did, I think that's part of the reason why he fizzled out, because with Mackenzie Blackwood being out and, Vitek in the first half of the season was, I wouldn't say lights out, but he was pretty good. I just think that that March and April, I don't know, I think he was overdoing it, so to speak, in the playoffs.
Well, you're right, Sammy. It's the first time that he had the ball, and it was his, and they carry us. And quite honestly, the whole team fizzled against Carolina. It was amazing how well Carolina's defense played against us. I mean, you talk about their forwards. Yeah, they had some guys. But their defense, and then they go against Florida, and that defense is kind of playing the way we hoped they would have played against us. And they started to break down and give chances. But I don't think it was just Vitek. Here's the thing with a goalie. There are times in a season, Marty Brodeur said this to me. He said, Chico, there's times in a season for 2-3 weeks where a particular goalie, and he didn't say who, is the best goalie in the league. Because these are top-end athletes, and they get on a roll, and they're the best. And he says it's to do it when the pressure's on, when it really counts. And Vitek's got to bring that a little more of that, and I agree with you guys. But I don't think those other guys are any guarantee either. And and I'll shut up because Nick's ready. I'm just saying, as a goalie, and I'm watching, I didn't see Vitek's starting to say drop too early or start to lose his angle or just, his style breakdown. I didn't see those glitches and flaws. So I wasn't too concerned. Marty Brodeur had Jacques Caron, the coot we used to call him. It's underestimated what he did for Marty in terms of between the ears. And Marty will tell you that. Vitek's got to get a little stronger between the ears. Everybody says that. We know it. But which goalie doesn't, right? For most up and coming, they're talking about Carter Hart and Philly, talking about maybe trading him. Thinking, well, okay. I mean, I see his skill, physical, but they're saying, yeah, but he's a little weak mentally. Well, okay, I don't know that, but I guess we all can be that until we're brought along the right way. But anyway, Nick, go ahead. What do you see with the goaltending situation?
Oh, I want nothing to do with Hellebuck. I don't know. I don't want Hellebuck. If you told me I could get Hellebuck for Holtz straight up, I would say no. Or something like Chase Stillman or something. If like a really good prospect and that's all it costs, I would still say no. He's about to be 30. He wants $9 million a year. If it goes wrong, you're ruined. Like you go from a team that could win championships to a team that's fighting the goalie. Look what happened at Pittsburgh after they paid Matt Murray. That ruined the end of the Sidney Crosby dynasty because Matt Murray forgot how to play hockey, and whether it was injury or whether it was in his head. I just wrote an article that said, "Look at Sergei Bobrovsky." And that's why you should still have faith in Vitek Vanecek. Because Sergei Bobrovsky, A, took a while to really get like an NHL starter job, just like Vanecek. B, was awful in his first 3 seasons in the playoffs. Just so terrible. Like under 900. 1 year, way under 900. Like 820 something or 830 something. Just like Vanecek was last year. And then something clicked. And that something that could click is that he's not tired anymore because he's used to playing a starter schedule. That's very possible. Earlier this
and Nick, the team's better. And the team is better. Remember, absolutely. In the playoffs, $10 million Bobrovsky's making. For 3 or 4 years, he is stealing money. And he has one playoff. But, and you're right, Nick. I'm with you here. And Tkachuk, not just Tkachuk, their defense, everybody raised their game, and so did he. So I want to say it was him, certainly, but it was like this whole team thing. They were a Cinderella team last year, the Florida Panthers were.
Absolutely. And he had the one good season in Columbus where they beat Tampa, and Bobrovsky was an extreme case, but it's a case that shows that early season save percentages aren't that can be fixed. And like you said, it's a lot of like just getting in the head. But on top of that, earlier this season, I talked about, you got Sam talked about Schmid. Schmid looks great. Like, I don't fault him for that Carolina series at all. He was getting hung out to dry a lot. Like, it just seemed like, I blame the Carolina series on the scheduling. Carolina had like 5 days off, and the Devils had 1. So, Carolina was watching tape, practicing, doing all those things, and the Devils were trying to beat the Rangers and then celebrating the Rangers win. So I don't really blame Schmid for that. But on top of Schmid, you got Nico Dawes in Utica. He did get hip surgery, which worries me. I thought he might be the guy, but I don't know what that hip surgery is going to do. Then you have Brennan, and then you have Jacob Malik. You have this, Cole Brady is at I think UConn. There's just a plethora of goalies that you could turn to that are very young. Why are you going to risk your future on Hellebuyck or on Gibson or on, if you want to go out and get, say, Marc-Andre Fleury, a guy who's got a year left, probably, maybe 2, who you think could get you over the hump this year, sure. I am not pinning my future, whether that's the picks and the prospects that it will take, and then the salary cap hit that you're going to take from Hellebuyck. I am not willing to risk that. That's just me.
Well, Nick, and I don't know, these rumors start with media and people just coming up, hey, this sounds like a good idea. I can't tell you who. I can't reveal it. The night before free agency, a goalie called me, and the Devils were very interested in him. And he asked me about what was going on there and da-da-da-da-da. Well, as it turned out, they didn't sign him. He signed somewhere else. But that's what you're talking about. Get a good backup. Like even Shesterkin or Vasilevsky, who's been to the mountain. He's won the cup. Ullmark, I don't know where he's at. I just think let's work with Vitek. I think we're just scratching the surface. And you're right, everyone, you guys are listening. I mean, if he falters again next year in the playoffs, then you got a case. But I mean, he won 18 one-goal games under pressure. I'm thinking, but I just saw a little bit of this. He'd get up high and then he'd get down a little bit. Well, that comes with having the ball for the first time, a team that you're just so anxious to be a part of. So I'm cutting them some slack. But again, I just went over in my mind how we could play so well in those last 4 games against the Rangers. But then I looked at Slavin and Burns. I'm drawing a blank on some of their other defensemen. Their defensemen, don't get me wrong.
Pesci's really good over there. And
Pesci was good. Yeah, very good, Nick. Their defense
Brady Shea played. Yeah, they have a really good defense.
And they did, but as we know, the playoffs are 4 rounds. And you can't have one player carry you for 4 rounds, or your defense, or even the goalie. Remember Bobrovsky, 9-7, 7-something in the finals. The guy was tired. He couldn't carry. You can't. And I'm glad, because hockey is a team game. And one guy should not be able to be the only force you have. So I think we all agree. I hope we do. Let's give Vitek one more chance. And I think the management wanted Schmid to go to Utica and play like 60 games. Okay. But I don't know that that's going to work, because development for players is very critical, and even like I remember Patrick Elias played in Utica. He said, you know what? I really learned a lot playing that 1 year. Did he want to? No. Even Marty played a minor league. So let's not forget the development where the player can be a star at that level. Then he goes up to the NHL. Whether he's a star at the NHL or not remains to be seen. But we don't want a guy developing under constant pressure. Like next year, all the Flyers alumni said to me, hey, you guys are in for some good times. you guys got a really good team. You know that, Nick. You know that, Sam. We are coming into the golden years of the second phase of New Jersey Devils hockey, and I'm excited about it. And so there will be pressure on everyone, but you don't want to force someone who is feeling so much heat because the expectations are so high that it causes his development to not progress the way we'd like. But that's the coaches and the general managers and management decisions on that.
Yeah, and that's the situation is that I still kind of question. Like you were bringing this up, like, hey, you want to get them game to go into Utica, and then I look at like the Devils like held onto Alex Holtz onto the NHL roster for like 40 games last year where he didn't play. So it's kind of interesting how they deal with each development differently. But I'll say this, and then Sam, I'll kind of throw it to you before we close on Chico. I don't think there's any chance that Schmid is in Utica the entire season. I think he starts in Utica. I think they're going to start with a strange tandem of Vanacek and Kalgren. And then when Dawes comes back from his hip injury, they're going to transition Schmid into the NHL team. Now, if you have one injury, you're in bad shape. But
oh yeah, well, remember that's what happened.
Problem.
Yeah, well, you were mentioning about Corey Schneider, and then even Mackenzie Blackwood. Blackie just had a bad streak of, weird stuff happening to him, and I still think he's got a lot of skill, but injuries and the mental, like I'm telling you, they are not robots wearing uniforms. They're not. What is it? L.
Yeah, artificial intelligence.
Yeah. They're not.
Blackwood could be pretty good in San Jose. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Scenery, maybe.
Let's hope so. But
Chico Resch. You go first, and then.
No, I'm done. You guys go, Sammy. Sammy, tell me what you're thinking in that head of yours. Are you thinking still of your vacation, or are you back into the old Devils podcast?
You're muted.
Sorry, a little jet lag right there.
Yeah,
my brain is just kind of because I didn't realize on the trip, but Alaska is a different time zone. I thought it was all Pacific in my mind, and I didn't, so I'm on Alaskan time right now.
You didn't know Alaska?
So you're not going to add anything to the goaltending situation?
You know what? Here are my thoughts. Go with what you have. See how the first half of the season, what it brings. Mm-hmm. By trade deadline, you should have your answer, what it really is.
Yeah.
Is it a fluke? Was last year a fluke, a one-hit wonder? Or is there something really special building here? With both goalies, with one goalie, one or the other, is Vitek going to have a breakout season? We don't know till they play.
Sam, that's brilliant, and that's through jet lag. You're giving these profound statements through jet lag. I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
The underrated thing they could do is trade for Hellebuyck and let him go be a free agent. Trade for him at the trade deadline. Give him, you don't get as high of a price on goalies at the trade deadline. Give them whatever it takes to get them, and then let him go to free agency. Let somebody else pay him $9 million.
Well, you know who might have an opinion on this? He's also in the top 50 as well on Nick's list. Mr. Devil himself, Ken Daneyko. He's waiting in the Andy Green room. Ken, how are you?
Is that the great Chico Resch?
That's him.
He's dimmed.
He's dimmed.
I can't.
You look relaxed, Chico. It seems you're enjoying your summer. That's a good thing. How are you guys?
Yes, it's good. Kenny, I want to ask you something, because here was the one guy I was talking to Diane about who could have Nick added. And be brutally honest, I like the guy, but the backup goalie to Marty Brodeur had a really nice Devils career. Became a coach.
Chris Terreri?
Yes. Did he have a bigger impact maybe than people realize because he was always in the shadow of Marty?
Well, I think so. I mean, Chris was obviously a guy that was there for the lean years as well. We don't forget. And for me, I never did. I know it's for banter and conversation. I'm not big on ranking anything, anytime. I know it's great for the fans and podcasts and fans throughout the National Hockey League, whether it's who's the best player, who's the top 10 of all time, who's the top 50, like we're doing here with of the New Jersey Devils. And to me, there was one thing that mattered, Chico. How much team success did we have? That's all I really cared about. Yes, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I know we love to say who's the most important here or there, and it's not always the most talented. I mean, that certainly is part of it. Is part, was the guy just highlight reel out there, even if he had a short-lived career in New Jersey, or if you had a long career like myself, and had impacts not only on the ice but in different ways throughout the community, the fans, the leadership, all those kinds of things. Those are important as well. I think Chris Terreri had some of that, especially in the early days when we were kind of transitioning, finally becoming a good team. So no question he could be in there, and we can always, have opinions and banter. This guy should be the top 50. This guy shouldn't. And we always do that. I've never been a big one of those guys that really believes in all that kind of thing. But having said that, because every teammate to me was so important at a particular time. But you make a good point there on Terreri, Chico.
But Kenny, I just say, as a defenseman, you played defense for yourself. Like, you weren't Stevens and you weren't Niedermeyer, you're Kenny Daneyko, but you had a lot of impact games. But I think as a goalie, sometimes the guy behind the starter, they talk. There's Buddy. And I just think Chris brought a level of security to Marty when Marty was young and, growing as a goalie. But I just want to say, and I'll get off here, I'm leaving, but I got to tell you, it was a fantasy camp. Yeah, there was a fantasy camp last weekend in Philly. And Kenny, you talk about impact. You know what they were still upset about? When they had you 3-1 and you guys came back and beat them. And you know the one thing, and I won't mention names, but it's been talked about. Eric Lindros had been out of that series. They were ahead 3-1 without Eric. Eric wanted to come back and be a part of it. And sometimes letting someone in at the wrong time is as detrimental as keeping him out. You know what I mean? And after Eric came back, for some reason, you guys just took off and you won 3 straight.
And then obviously was that game 7, though, the devastating hit from Scotty Stevens there, obviously. But
yes.
Yeah, that at times, regardless how good you are, and Eric Lindros was a dynamite player and an absolute beast out there and a Hall of Famer, but you have something going, you have some rhythm, and it can kind of upset what you have going up 3-1. I totally agree with you, Chico. It's such a tough decision, right? I mean, how do you keep out an Eric Lindros when he says he's ready to go, right? It's a difficult decision, but I'm sure after it was all said and done and after we came back and won 3 straight, large in part to Larry Robinson for sure behind the bench and keeping us understanding the moment and that we're not out of it kind of thing, and that epic kind of Newt Rockney, Vince Lombardi wasn't so much a speech but an emotional appeal to us, to turn things around. But yeah, I'm sure they question that for sure, that maybe they would have won the series. They're a great team. They would have won the series if, in fact, they did not put Eric Lindros back in the lineup. And
yes,
but I don't know
Kenny. But Kenny, you won 3 cups. I think you could have won 4 or 5. What fans and people don't realize, there's a chemistry thing going on in that office in the locker room that you can't describe unless you're there. sometimes the players don't even know it, but they feel it. And I just think there's times where you just, you know, the old saying, if something's not broke, just let it go. Eric could have came back the next series. I think it was such a diversion and a change of focus that I think it worked against them. Obviously, we played well too, don't get me wrong, but it was just something for discussion, and no one will ever know. Definitely. But I was saying to the guys earlier, Kenny, you're not robots. You guys, number 3 was not a robot out there. And if you were lucky enough to be in the dressing room with you, Kenny, you found out very quickly this guy's not a robot. He's dancing to a different drummer. And I can't say enough about what a great player you were, Kenny.
Sam, you're muted again.
Well,
okay. I don't know what happened to Sam. I don't know what happened to Kenny. I think there's a little technical difficulty over there, Chico. But Chico, I know you got to go back to enjoy your summer. You got a couple weeks left, and you're at the cabin, and you know it looks great out there. But I want to get you back to your night. I so appreciate this. Thank you so much for looking at the list and just talking with me about it, talking to our fans. I know everybody's really excited. They're excited about the season. Do you have any final words for what we're looking forward to for next year?
I just don't know what to expect. I mean, this thing could blow up into, we could make a shot at the cup. We talked about injuries. I just think, Nick, to project is fun. We all like to project, but Sam was saying it. I just want to see it unfold. Here's what I want. Oh, there's Kenny. And Kenny's the same way now doing analyzing the hockey. I just want to see it unfold and then make adjustments if that is what has to happen. Like if it's done right next year and everything falls into place, it could be an outstanding year. And I trust Fitzy. I mean, Fitzy's pretty much going to do things if he has to for this team to win, because they're in a position. I don't know. You guys will talk to Kenny about it. I mean, the biggest thing is, Nick, I don't know about our defense. Our forwards are going to be as good as there are in the league. I think our goaltending is going to be fine. Kenny can talk to you about the defense. And to me, if the defense comes through, this Devils team is going to be one of the best in the league.
Yeah, no, that'll be fun, Chica. Expectations are higher. How do they handle that? That's a big key, right? Expectations are here now. They were way below going into last season, and they exceeded expectations by a long, long margin during the regular season and even come playoff time, really. And it reared its ugly head in the playoffs a little bit. That you need that experience. You need to have gone through some situations, able to get your motivation and your ramp up again for another round, and they'll learn once they get to the playoffs this year, we hope, and after beating your arch rivals. But I'm always cautiously optimistic. I keep things in perspective. They look like an exciting young team. They should be good. But I agree with you on Fitzy. Now it's rapid fire. Now expectations are higher, so he is going to make adjustments quick if guys aren't producing or performing to their expectations. And because now everybody in the hockey world has them ranked pretty high to make some noise this year, right?
Exactly. Well, thank you. It was good to see you, Kenny. Nick, thanks for having me on, you and Sam, and enjoy the Dano, man. He'll have some good things to say in the next part of your podcast. See you now.
Before you run away, when you brought up Chris Terreri, never forget when we went down 0-2 to the Boston Bruins, right? And Terreri came in and went in the Garden and beat them twice. That right there, that probably has me put him in the top 50, because without him, we move on and do what we did the rest of the way. I know Marty came back, but that's when Marty was a young guy, and Chris kind of settled the waters down a little bit for us after a rough start against the Bruins in that series.
Good point, Kenny. Take care, and we'll see you in a month or so, everyone.
See you, Chico.
Thanks for having me on. See you, Kenny.
Thanks, Chico.
Say hi to your lovely wife, the better half. Boy, never was the term better half more appropriate than Kenny and his wife.
I couldn't agree more.
Bye,
okay.
Thank you, Chico.
Marines, thanks.
That's Chico Resch.
Yeah, we're here with Ken.
On, guys. With both of us on, we wouldn't stop. So
yeah, hey, listen, I'll go home. I'll go. You know, I got a newborn at home. He's sleeping right now, though. Thank goodness. But yeah,
how we doing, fellas?
We're doing good, Ken. We're doing good. I'm not gonna ask you to talk about the rankings so much, but I want to talk about two things that stood out when I wrote about the rankings. Right. It's two teams in particular, and it's kind of two teams that I kind of forgot how good they were because they didn't win championships. And the first one was that 1987-88 team, because we remember a couple things. You know, the most famous thing is the have another donut thing that everybody talks about on it constantly. But we also remember the overtime win in the last game of the season that put them in the playoffs, and then we remember the run to the Eastern Conference Final. But when I look at the stats, you know, I was born in 1988, so you know I don't know this season very well. But when I look at the stats, it you know, Kirk Muller had a career year, Aaron Broughton had a career year, Pat Verbeek had one of his best years with the Devils, John McClain went absolutely psycho mode at the end of the season. Like if you look at his numbers, they don't compare. Like he only had 39 points, but 23 goals. A lot of them came at the end of the season. He was absolutely insane in the playoffs. What happened this year that it just seemed to finally come together and everybody just hit career years?
Oh, well, obviously it was a different time, and there was a little more. Certainly, we always got to put that, you know, in perspective as far as points were maybe a little easier to come by. That's taking nothing away from anyone as far as scoring. I remember throughout the National Hockey League, goaltending wasn't as consistent throughout the league, I would think. And I first put that out there. Having said that, we had a lot of good young talent. It was brewing very similar to this Devils team now. After the team moved in '82 to New Jersey, it was in disarray, to say the least. It was coming from Colorado, mismanaged, not a whole lot of talent. Some key veteran guys that were important, certainly, that really molded some of the young guys, like myself and McClain and Muller and Verbeek and everybody else. And Shanahan came along, and Wolanin was there as well. But like the Russells and the Dave Lewises and Rich Prestons and Mel Bridgemans in the early days. So those guys were important, but they were at the tail end of their careers. But we went through those lean years for the first 3-4 years. And you could see as the team was drafting well, there was good prospects. And you got Muller, obviously. That was the year Maryland Mew went one, but Kurt Muller was a pretty damn good player in his own right, going number 2. And then Johnny Mack in '83, number 6 overall. '82, the original year, Verbeek and myself were drafted in that year. It started to come around, and I know we had a good, tight-knit young core group that believed in ourselves. We didn't like to be the bottom feeder. We knew inside if we stick together and get the right leadership and get in the right direction, that we could become something. I always said it. We all said it together. And that '88 team was very special, no question. If you saw how we celebrated like we won the cup that last game in overtime against the Hawks. And it was just real. It was just a bunch of young kids who couldn't believe we made the playoffs. And we were able to carry that to winning a couple of rounds. And obviously, you got to give Lou Lamoriello a ton of credit. That was his first year as Devils general manager. So obviously, from a guy that not too many people knew in the hockey world outside of Providence, where he was a god and an AD and coach and everything else, comes to the New Jersey Devils. But he commanded instant respect, gave us a path, gave us a belief of that what it was going to take to win, and certainly that great run, 7-0-1 our last 8 games, I believe, just to get in the playoffs, and the dramatic overtime goal still never gets old watching it. I mean, it's just gives me chills every single time I see it, and I've seen it a lot. And then I continue to watch the celebration because, like I said, I don't think I've seen a team celebrate the way we did, throwing our gloves in the air. And some people would think that's ludicrous. Why, you just made the playoffs. Now the work really begins. But it was just spur of the moment, the emotion of this young group going, we finally made the playoffs. First time in franchise history, and we've been in the league, or in New Jersey, 6-7 years at the time. So, and it just all came together, everybody chipping in. We were bigger, we were more physical. Lou had added that element to our team, the way the game was played back then. And these young guys look, Brendan Shanahan, second overall pick, was playing on the fourth line and chipping in offensively, but he was fighting every tough guy in the league. So every guy would do whatever it took at that time of the National Hockey League, and a lot of that was physicality, and we were not going to be intimidated either. And then we had the young guns like the Verbeeks and Mullers, and you mentioned Broughton. How about Patrick Sundstrom and the Dutch and Mark Johnson? Those guys were outstanding for us. It all came together, but like any team, like anybody, you get tired of losing. And this group of guys were winners. These guys wanted to win bad, and we pulled it together just in time to just sneak into the playoffs and made some noise there as well.
Yeah. I mean, got into the Eastern Conference Final as that young of a team and with those pieces. And you talk about the celebration. This is a franchise that I'd have to go back, but the Devils had never made the playoffs at that point. So that's at least 6 years that you had a team that never made it. And you did it in the most dramatic fashion possible.
We were winning 17 games a year the first few seasons, and then I think we upped our win total of 26 and then gradually got better. And yeah, you get tired of losing, but if you don't, you'll always be on the outside looking in. But we had drafted well. The organization had started to draft much better. And like I said, I give Lou Lamoriello a ton of credit. He came in, and for an unknown, usually it's that experienced GM, a guy that's been around the National Hockey League that has an impact. Boy, there was no messing around right from day one when Lou Lamoriello, he had that it factor, that respect, that my way or the highway kind of attitude, and you felt it right away. He was here to win. He was here to turn things around, and that's exactly what he did.
So the other team I want to ask about is that 2000-2001 team, because it was just, again, it didn't win the Stanley Cup, so it doesn't get as much focus, but it did go to the Stanley Cup, went to the seventh game against a really good Colorado team. Just some of the numbers. Patrick Elias, at that point, the franchise record with 96 points in a season. Mo Gilney had one of his best seasons, 43 goals and 40 assists. Sikora had 81 points. Gomez had 63 points coming off Rookie of the Year. Breland had a 23-goal season. Like if Sergei Breland's scoring 23 goals, like there's something in the water there. Holik was still playing really well. Randy McKay had a 23-goal season, which again was not his forte, but he just pulled something out. John Madden had a 23-goal season. What happened that season that the offense just clicked and it just seemed like everything gelled at the perfect time?
Well, look, that was at the tail end of my career. The last 8 years or 9 years, we went to the Stanley Cup Finals 4 times, and that was the culture we had, and the leadership and the core group. It was Stanley Cup or bust every year from 95 on. Really, doesn't mean it's always going to materialize, but our team was filled with that many guys that just knew what it took to win, and certainly now the talent. And we had all these guys you mentioned that were scoring goals. It wasn't just the prolific, highly talented, skilled guys like the McGillneys and like the Patrick Elias, a young Patrick Elias at the time, that were putting the puck in net. It was, look, John Madden was a beast. He was a great two-way player and went on to win a Selke. And eventually, I don't know if it was that year, I can't remember what year, but, Pandolfo and Randy McKay, one of my all-time favorite Devils. I mean, the guy could play the game any way he wanted. He had a lot better hands than people think, because we see it in practice every day as defensemen. And McKay was that guy that, he'd fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. He had no fear, and he wasn't the biggest guy. So he took care of that and protected a lot of teammates and fought the heavyweights on the other teammate when that was prevalent in the National Hockey League. But when you have him on the fourth line, scoring 23 goals and the beast that Bobby Holik was, you could go on down the list. That was a heck of a team, and we ran into a heck of a Colorado team. But that still haunts me. I remember losing that series because, we would have won back-to-back. That would have been, 3 cups in 6 years, and then we go on to win in 2003, so it would have been 3 and 4 years, and that's dynasty territory, right? So you start talking about that, whether we're in that territory or not. But that win in 2001 would have solidified it. And I remember sitting next to Scott Stevens on the plane ride home, and we had won the year before, and the feeling of that loss was as low, comparable in a different manner to winning the season before, because that was a hell of a team. We had them down 3-2, game 6 in our building, and by the way, bombarded them in the first period. The difference was, and we were down 1, the difference is Patrick Roy, their goaltender, stood in his head. He had a great series. Yes, they had great players and a great team, and Sakic and the likes, and Bork and Blake, and you can go on down the list. But that was one of our best teams, if not our best team. And unfortunately, we lost to a team that was just as hungry, and they found a way to beat us in 6, where I felt we outplayed them quite a bit in Game 7. They took it to us, and that's going back to their building. So it was heartbreaking. It happens. That's sports, baby. But I'll tell you, still haunts me. Everybody says, well, you went to the Cup Finals 4 times in your career, and you won 3. That's a pretty good percentage. I go, I know, but that one loss still sticks with me, because we had them dead to right, up 3-2, chance to win it at home in Game 6, and we didn't get the job done. But you tip your cap. Colorado found a way, and I give Patrick Roy a lot of credit, one of the greatest goaltenders of all time, right there with my buddy Marty Brodeur, and he was outstanding as well, and he was the difference, certainly a lot in that series, and certainly in Game 6.
So, we got 5 minutes left. I kind of want to pivot to the current team, just because there's so much to talk about this offseason. Chico was going on about we were talking about the goalie. There's been so many rumors about goalies. Oh, the Devils going to get a goalie. It's Hellebuyck. It's Gibson. It's, there's the guy in Boston. There's a bunch of every goalie that could be possibly tied to the Devils has been tied to the Devils. Are you okay that they didn't do anything? They're sticking with Vanacek and Schmidt?
Sometimes the best move is the move that you didn't make, and that's kind of how I feel about this at the moment. I'm not one of those guys that believes you need to have your team set in stone in September. By February, your team looks different anyway. It's never the same 20 guys, 23 guys in one season. Very rarely anyway. That means things are going pretty well and smoothly and perfectly, and it just doesn't. There's adversity, there's ups, there's downs in a year, no matter how good your team is. And yes, the expectations are much higher because the team looks pretty damn good, certainly on paper. Now you got to go play the games. Both goaltenders got the job done last year. Everybody's just looking at the playoffs. That's a team thing. It always is a team thing, and that's the mentality they have to have. Yes, did Vanacek not play as good in the playoffs? Well, that was the obvious as he did in the regular season. He was outstanding in the regular season. If he didn't play, without Vanacek, they don't get to the playoffs. He was made every timely save for the most part all season long, ran out of some gas in the playoffs, and he's still got to get over that hump. Come playoff time, he's still a young goaltender, and I still believe he can. Schmid, we saw what he did. He came in and surprised the hockey world and got them back in the Rangers series as the Devils went on to win in 7, as we know. I'm a big believer in him. I believe until he falters, you got to keep giving him the opportunity because he looked that good. Did he have a few hiccups in Carolina series? Yeah, he did, like the rest of the team. That was a team thing. They played the second best team in the National Hockey League during the regular season. Carolina was a heck of a team. After winning an emotional series against the New York Rangers with a young group, that's what experience means. When everybody says experience, what does it mean? It doesn't mean you can't win without experience, but that you usually have to go through it. They couldn't ramp up their emotion and energy right out of the gate against Carolina. After you say all the right things, it's a subconscious thing going into the series. One day in between, now you go to round 2. That's part of growing as a team, part of the young guys getting that experience. They will be more prepared for that, I believe, if they get in the playoffs this time around and win around, understanding that, oh no, That's about balance. That's about staying even keeled. And they just weren't able to ramp it up against Carolina. I thought they got it going at the end of the series, and I felt if they won Game 5, no question it was going to Game 7, because now they were starting to feel comfortable. And that was a tough Game 5 loss in overtime there. But if they won Game 5, I really believe in my heart they could have came back, because now they understood what it was taking. You got it. It gets tougher. And those are I speak from experience, the teams that I played on, we had such a veteran core group and a nice mixed blend of young guys and 5-6 year veteran guys, and then the older veterans like me and Stevens and McKay and Broder and guys like that understood. You win a round, you move on. Doesn't matter. Now it's time to, whether it's your arch rival, yeah, you're excited about it, but it's on to round 2, because there's more to go. There's an ultimate goal. There's one ultimate goal, to win the Stanley Cup. And I think these guys will learn a whole lot from last season. But getting back to the goaltending, these two guys are capable. They showed it. They did it. If they falter early, I have all the faith in the world from what I've seen from Tom Fitzgerald as general manager. He will address it. But I don't think it had to be addressed right away. No, everybody's just looking at a couple of games in the playoffs. Have we forgotten what Daneyko did all season long? Can he get back to that? Or is he going to have some hiccups early like he did in the playoffs? Well, then you might have to address it. I mean, he's a good kid. He cares. He works his tail off. I think he's going to be the same B-Tech Daneyko we saw last year, and that was pretty damn good. And Schmid, sky's the limit. It's where he's at. He's a young guy. Will he go through some growing pains? Maybe. But he seems to have that great demeanor that we talk about goaltenders need as far as even-keeled and balanced, because you're not going to be perfect. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have bad periods, bad games, a bad week. They let in a bad goal. It's how you respond to that. And Schmid's been able so far to show us at a young age and quickly that he's able to rebound right away. And I think that's the most important element from a goaltender. So, no, do I think it had to be addressed right now? Believe me, Fitzy was looking at it, no question about it. I mean, from all the rumors you hear, and they're not all true, some are, but he wants to he's already said it. This team is ready now. He didn't know last year, going into the season. We were thinking they just got to be better than last year. I didn't even know if they'd make the playoffs. Now, they've raised the bar. They've made the expectations now that, yeah, we can vie for a Stanley Cup. And he will make those decisions quickly, abruptly, if need be, and address if it's goaltending, if it's defense, what toughness, whatever it may be. Those are the 3 things I think off the top of my head that may rear their ugly heads. We'll see.
Ken, my last question for you is, are you worried about the hype at all? There's a lot of hype around this team. The nationally televised games came out. There's 16 Devils nationally televised games this year. Are you worried that it's too much hype too soon?
I always worry. I do. I mean, worry in a good way, because, again, exactly what we've been talking about is the expectations are raised. Are they ready to handle that as a young group? But I think they've got a nice balance now. Everything, I've talked to Fitzy a lot over the last handful of years since he became the general manager, and he gets it. He understands what it takes, and you need those young, hungry, energetic, youthful guys. You need guys that have been 3-4 years in the league, like the Hugheses, and Isha's a little more now, and Bratt's a little more now. Those kind of middle guys that have had 6-year careers or whatever it be, 6-7 year careers that have got that experience. And then you need some veterans like Palat. I expect a lot out of Palat this year. I saw some people were a little down on him. I'm not down on them all. Who made the biggest play that was the difference in the hockey game in Game 7 while you brought him in? Andre Palat. I mean, and he was injured last year, had surgery, getting acclimated to a new team. He's going to be a beast. I mean, his experience, his leadership, been there, done that, knows what it takes, is going to be huge. They add to Foley. He's won a cup as a young Los Angeles King. He's a sniper, doesn't need as many opportunities to score. He's heavy on the puck. He's a guy that's been through it, been around it. So they're going to lend that knowledge. Eric Holla as well had a terrific year. He's a guy that's been around. He's always been in the playoffs. these veteran guys, I think there's a nice balance of young, youthful, exuberant guys with the Luke Hugheses coming into the lineup, and then the Bratts and the Hickshires and Jack Hughes, like I said, what is he? Is already his 4th year? I don't even know now. It seems like it's gone quick, but he's become a superstar in this league already, and he's a guy that wants to lead and wants to win. So I always use the term cautiously optimistic, but it's how these guys handle it together as a group, as a team, and Tom Fitzgerald as well, and the coaching staff, Lindy Ruff with all his experience. They'll navigate these guys through that, but a lot of the leadership that I talked about that have been around 10 plus years and won championships in Palat and Toffoli are going to be instrumental this year, and I think they've got what it takes to continue to grow, continue to be a team that can vie for a cup, but I always am nervous. I always don't look too far ahead. As they say, I hate it as much as anybody, the cliche, one game at a time. You got to perform. You got to be ready to play. You got to be ready to go through adversity and losing streaks and be able to bounce back. Last year was a whirlwind. These young guys had a lot of fun out there. Going to be tougher this year. Teams are going to be ready for them.
I agree. I couldn't say it better myself. That's because I'm not Ken Daneyko. But you are Ken Daneyko, and you spent we really appreciate it. We want to thank you for spending some time with us tonight, talking about some of the great memories of those teams, your hatred of rankings, which I will keep in mind now. I gotta keep it. I gotta try to move.
Listen to me. I respect and love you guys for, it's conversation. It's hockey. We love it. It's great for the fans, great for everybody. We do it when I do NHL Network. We do it, and I always preface. Yeah. I hate ranking the top 20 defensemen, and they ask me to do it as well. I guess I hate it. I hate it because you go, oh, you don't know nothing. This guy's way better than that guy. Do you know what I mean? And especially for me being a player and being in it and winning championships with those guys, it's really hard because there's so many players I respect and loved as teammates that weren't in the top 50 and easily could have been, right? Yeah, but you can only put 50 in. So it's a very difficult thing to do, right? And you guys probably found that out. And so when I say I hate it, I say it with respect, meaning it's just very hard, very difficult. Because for me, I always preface, and I hope these young guys and us going into the season understand, it's about one thing. It's not about numbers and stats. Yes, we need guys to score. We need guys to make plays. We need guys to block shots. We need the goaltenders to stop the puck to win hockey. It's about results. It's about winning the Stanley Cup. That's all that mattered to me. That's all that mattered to the core group of guys. Why do you think Scout Niedermayer didn't care if he had 80 points or 40 points? Because he was a well-rounded player doing whatever it took to win. Patrick Elias probably could have had 1,200 points in the National Hockey League. He still had a pretty good 1,000 points in the league, but he became one of the best two-way players in the game because it was about winning. It wasn't cheating, in a 4-2 game or 3-2 game, and all of a sudden it's turned around and you end up losing the game 5-4. And it sounds simplistic, right? But successful teams do it consistently every night, whereas you'll see on other teams that don't win consistently, or great players that never win, in my opinion, is because sometimes they cheat on the wrong side of the puck. They cheat the game, and it does affect your overall core. It resonates without your team. So to me, that's why I say rankings, this, that. I rank one thing. I rank wins. I rank championships. That's what matters to me. But
it's the number that matters.
To talk about. It's fun to talk about. I get it, guys. I've just always prefaced that it's really hard for me. I have a lot of respect for every player that's played a game in the National Hockey League, let alone had a long, lengthy career. But especially guys my teammates. I mean, I can talk about guys on my teams through my 20-year career that played 40 games, and they had an impact. They meant something to the team. They meant something to their teammates. They meant something to me. And so it's really hard to rank. But we had so many great, terrific players that you guys certainly illustrated in the top 50, because all those guys are fantastic.
Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you. Do you have anything to promote? Do you have anything to plug before we let you go?
Wow. You got me on the spot. No.
Sorry.
Hey, let's go Devils, baby. And just the fans, the fans, I know they're going to be excited going into this season. Just understand, everything may not go perfect. We hope it does, and maybe it does. But when there's a 3-game slide. Let's understand that it's a long year. We saw it happen, in December of of last season, where, no, the other shoe's dropping, and they found their way out of it. You know what I mean? And now they're even more experienced to find their way out of it, but they just got to come together as a team. So I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, I think Fitzy's done a terrific job, and his team, because it takes the whole staff. They've done a lot of good things over the last handful of years to put the pieces in place, and we all get impatient at times, including myself, and I know the fans do, but it's taken time, and it's come to fruition. Now it's about these guys doing it on the ice and understanding what it takes every night to become a champion, because it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody would win.
We love that. Thank you so much, Ken, for spending some time with us.
Yep.
I did not to promote it, but eventually, because people that know I'm a cigar aficionado. That's my love, and I learned it from after winning championships. I am coming out with a Ken Daneyko cigar, a Mr. Devil cigar.
Whoa!
That's fantastic.
With a great company, San Giuseppe. So look out for it. It's it's kind of my passion, so I'm kind of excited about it. And the label's really cool.
That's awesome.
Around. So I guess that's something I'll throw out there and promote.
Yeah,
and
the Ken Daneyko cigar. You gotta get that. I come from Tampa, the cigar city, so that's a big passion. We love cigars.
They have. I'm the first hockey guy with these guys. These guys have only been around 3 years. They've got a great brand, and they've got John Daly, crazy John Daly, in their mix, and Jose Reyes from baseball.
Nice.
Wow.
So we're gonna have a Mr. Devil cigar eventually here. So I'm looking forward to that. So I appreciate you letting me throw that out there. And always another one, I love to throw. My face is looking good, isn't it? Put your skin.
Yeah.
It works for men.
You
too.
you look radiant actually today. I was
Doing
just thinking about it. Yeah.
I'm getting younger.
TV ready. Yeah.
Guys, next year I turn 60, the big 6-0, and I certainly don't feel it, and I hope my skin doesn't either. Thank you to Jamie.
You're looking great,
well.
Ken. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
All right, fellas. Great to be on with you. Keep up the great work.
All right, thank you, Ken. That is the great Ken Daneyko. I hope to see him on the road this year, Nick.
Yeah.
When the podcast travels to other arenas. Remember that time we did that Tampa at Amalie Arena?
That was
weekend?
great. That was so much fun.
Yeah. Wow. But
I got to close, Sam.
Oh, yeah. So what are you plugging?
So pucksandpitchforks.com. I moved up the 50th greatest of all time. So it's now on the front page right there, top, front, and center. So go on pucksandpitchforks.com. Go check out the article. 50th greatest of all time. We have a bunch of others. Jersey Joe's written. Marcy Rubin's going to write something. We got a bunch of writers, but pucksandpitchforks.com. That's where you got to go.
Great. Well, thank you to all those listening. We'll do a little edits, dropping the podcast at midnight. Thank you to Ken Daneyko, Mr. Devil, and Chico Resch for coming on to the podcast as the Let's Go Devils podcast continues. Till next time, let's go Devils.